everyone, and welcome to the third and final installment of my special Undertaker series, The Best and Worst of The Undertaker. 30 years in the WWE, and I take a look at each year of his career and pick a best and worst match. And I talked about it a little bit in part 2, but I really gotta say it here, I kind of screwed the pooch on this one, because going chronologically was a big mistake. I should have gone out of order and just picked random years for all three parts, but damage is already done. Now, why is this a mistake? Because as Undertaker got later and later into his career, he wrestled less and less and less, so picking a best and worst match from each year in the last decade became much, much harder because there wasn't as much to choose from. So there's a lot less to talk about, unfortunately. But the good thing is, this final part is going to cover the years of Undertaker's career that I spent covering The Undertaker on this YouTube channel, because I started making videos in 2010, and that's where we're going to begin here. We're going to go with 2010, and then work all the way to 2020, where he had his final match, the Boneyard match with AJ Styles. So, same format as before. I'm going to pick a best and worst match for each year. Now, some years that's impossible, because he only wrestled once, and picking a best and a worst is basically pointless in those situations, but I'm going to do my absolute best and pay my respects to The Undertaker's legendary career. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get started. And we begin with 2010, which, like 2009, has a very obvious pick for best match of Undertaker's year, and that would be yet another WrestleMania match with Shawn Michaels. Following the success of their match from WrestleMania 25, it became kind of a no-brainer to do a rematch between the two, this time with Shawn Michaels' career on the line, in the famous Streak versus Career match. They were given the main event closing spot of WrestleMania this year, and it worked exceedingly well. I don't think it was as good as the 25 match, but it was still very, very good. And the emotional gut punch of Shawn Michaels losing his career made that match memorable and made it special and made it worthy of being a WrestleMania closer. So that is my pick for Undertaker's best match of 2010. Now, his worst match would have to come from another series of matches that came with Taker revisiting an old rivalry. This is the year that we got the infamous Undertaker got left in a vegetative state, and them trying to find the culprit, which, you know, was obviously Kane from the word go, even though he was trying to act like it wasn't him. It was obviously him right from the beginning, and of course we got the very obvious reveal, which led to yet another series of matches between the Brothers of Destruction. Undertaker and Kane wrestling each other for the world title, no less, on pay-per-view in 2010 was absolutely insane to me. I mean, if this match was stale in 2000, you can't even imagine how sick of it I was in 2010. And I remember, they made Kane world champion at this point, and I was thinking, like, what year is this? What is happening right now? So my pick for the worst Undertaker-Kane match from this year was their Buried Alive match from Bragging Rights 2010. Bragging Rights, one of the worst pay-per-view concepts that WWE ever did. And we get this terrible match on top of that terrible concept. Stupid, boring, awful, terrible. The feud was over and done with. They should have buried this feud and never gone back to it ever again. But yay, more Undertaker and Kane. If you want to watch more Undertaker and Kane, 2010 has got you covered, because they also worked a Hell in a Cell match with each other too. That also wasn't very good, but it is what it is. And when I think of Undertaker in 2010, unfortunately, I think of that Kane feud, because I was just absolutely bewildered by them revisiting this old rivalry. It was a mess. Now we move on to 2011, which featured The Undertaker only wrestling once, and that was his WrestleMania match with Triple H at WrestleMania 27, the No Holds Barred match. Pretty good match. It was the best thing on this particular WrestleMania, which I hated WrestleMania 27. First WrestleMania I reviewed on this channel. I remember doing that review, and I was sick as a dog when I filmed it. One of the worst videos I ever did, but I digress. Yeah, it's impossible to pick a best and a worst from this year because Undertaker only wrestled once, and this was kind of the beginnings of Undertaker being more of an annual attraction rather than a special sometimes attraction. And this is the beginnings of Undertaker wrestling less and less and less. So picking a best and worst in 2011 can't really do it because there's only the one match. The one match in question is pretty good and largely sets up a rematch between the two at the next WrestleMania. So be on the lookout for that one. Here we go, it's 2012, and like the old song says, second verse, same as the first. Undertaker only wrestled once this year, and it was against Triple H in the Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania 28 with Shawn Michaels as the guest referee. A match that was very well received. Very exciting match for the most part, and featured that famous spot where Shawn Michaels super kicked the Undertaker and then Triple H pedigreed him, which I think for a lot of people was the last time they thought the streak was going to end. And I'm being completely honest when I say this, I didn't buy it. I knew Undertaker was going to kick out because this was where it had gotten to the point at WrestleMania where, you know, Shawn had kicked out of the Tombstone, Triple H had kicked out of the Tombstone, and the Undertaker WrestleMania matches were becoming kind of finisher-festy. So I wasn't surprised when Undertaker kicked out. Let me put it that way. But the match itself was still very good and was designed to be the end of an era and the final showdown between the Attitude Era legends. I wish it had been, but it wasn't. It wasn't. But the Hell in a Cell match is very, very good. But I can't pick a best and a worst from 2012 because this was Undertaker's only match from this year. So I can't really do anything with that. So let's move on to the next year. Now we're in 2013, and this one is very special to me because I was actually in attendance for this match. I attended WrestleMania 29, and I got to see The Undertaker wrestle CM Punk in a match that far and away stole the show at WrestleMania 29. If you don't believe me, ask CM Punk. He'll be sure to tell you all about it. But I thought the match that these two had, despite a rather poor setup, and despite the death of Paul Bearer being used to kind of promote the match, which was kind of ghoulish, the match itself turned out to be very exciting and turned out very, very well, and easily the best match from this entire show. And fortunately, it wasn't Undertaker's only match of the year, so I have other options to work with. He also worked a six-man tag teaming with Daniel Bryan and Kane against The Shield. Now, The Shield at the time was having these stellar six-man tag matches. Some of the best, I guess you would call them trios matches. Like, The Shield probably has the record for the most greatest trios matches of all time. And this was one of them. I thought this match was very, very good. And on paper, their toughest challenge because they were going up against Undertaker. And The Shield came out victorious. So that match turned out very well. What turned out less well was a match that Undertaker had with Dean Ambrose, who you may know now as Jon Moxley, on an episode of SmackDown in April of 2013, where Undertaker basically destroyed Ambrose and made him look like a chump. Now, I'll kind of defend it a little bit in that The Shield beat Undertaker in the six-man tag format because that's their forte, or it was their forte at the time. And if you put Dean Ambrose in a singles match with Undertaker, it's going to go very different. Undertaker's going to have the full advantage in that situation. So it's like, all right, I guess I kind of, it kind of makes logical sense given the dynamics of the two different matches. But I need to pick a worst match here, and this was basically it. It was my only real option. So if I had to pick a worst match from 2013, it would be his match with Dean Ambrose. Here we go, it's 2014, and it's yet another year where The Undertaker only wrestled once, and it was at WrestleMania. But in a strange way, it's kind of the perfect one for this series, because it's both it truly is like the best and the worst match of Undertaker's career, depending on how you look at it. The match itself is terrible. Absolutely awful. I reviewed it on this channel, and I said it was an absolutely horrible, terrible match. But it is one of the most historic of Undertaker's career, and that is his WrestleMania 30 match with Brock Lesnar, where the streak came to an end. 21-1. Brock Lesnar ended the streak for good. Shocking that WrestleMania crowd into a stunned silence. One of the most genuinely authentic reactions I've ever seen from a crowd to any situation in professional wrestling. And to WWE's credit, they actually turned Brock Lesnar into the unkillable monster that you should become after ending Undertaker's streak. So they actually booked Lesnar correctly following the end of the streak, which I didn't think they were going to do. So full props and full credit for that. Now, like I said, the match itself was terrible. I will, however, amend my statements that I made at the time where I said, wow, Undertaker looks awful. He should retire. I'm going to tweak that somewhat where I'll say, I didn't know at the time that Undertaker had concussed himself during the match, and he was basically being carried around by Lesnar like a rag doll throughout this really long, half-hour-long match. And the match being bad is for that reason more than anything else. So it's like, okay, that's why, it's one of those unfortunate things that happens. But I also think the match was bad because nobody honestly thought that Lesnar was going to beat Undertaker. He lost to Triple H the year before, so why would anybody think he's going to beat Undertaker? It just felt like a foregone conclusion that Taker was going to win. And even after hitting 3 F5s, the crowd was still shocked that was the pinfall. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier about the Hell in a Cell with Triple H, where it's like, I was used to seeing Undertaker kick out of everything at WrestleMania at this point. So the finisher festy aspect of Undertaker's matches at WrestleMania had just gotten ridiculous. So, no, I was shocked too when it was the finish. And, it kind of was like this match was where the booking of Undertaker's previous WrestleMania matches kind of came back to haunt them a little bit. But by going with the result that they went with, they made the match historic and memorable. So it's a match that will go down in history. It was the end of the streak, and it'll be talked about for years and years to come for that reason. So is that enough to save the match? I don't know. But in a weird way, for of all the years where Undertaker only wrestled once, this is the best one to cover for this type of series and what I'm doing, because it truly is both his best in being his most memorable, one of his most memorable matches, but also the worst of the year because the match itself was poorly worked and just terrible all around. But it's amazing how a result can kind of fix things and make it stand out even more and make something historic. So this is probably the all-time greatest example of that. Now we go to 2015, where The Undertaker would come back to get revenge against Brock Lesnar for ending the streak, and that led to a couple of pay-per-view matches between them, including a match at SummerSlam, where The Undertaker came out victorious with one of the stupidest finishes I think I've ever seen, and a Hell in a Cell rematch, the second Hell in a Cell between the two, at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Nowhere near as good as their 2002 match, but actually pretty good. It was a pretty good match, and it's the one that I'm going to pick as Undertaker's best from 2015. A nice, hard-hitting, brawling type of match inside the Hell in a Cell where Brock Lesnar defeated The Undertaker once again. Very, very good match between the two, but again, I prefer the 2002 Hell in a Cell match over that one for the sheer blood and brutality that one put on display. Now, if I had to pick a worst from 2015, it would be his match at Survivor Series, where Undertaker teamed up with Kane against the Wyatt family. So here we are. We have this gimmick, this new group of characters, the Wyatt family. They're red friggin' hot. Great gimmick. Everybody loves him. Bray is, one of the hottest acts in the company. And first they did the whole thing where Bray ended up getting fed to John Cena, which wasn't great. And then he kind of floundered for a bit because it was like he was the heel, so he had to lose all the time. And that did a lot of damage to Bray. But here he is. He's going to be working with Undertaker. And he actually worked with Undertaker at WrestleMania, a match that I also thought wasn't very good. But this one was much worse because it involved the entire Wyatt family and Undertaker and Kane. And, you get to Survivor Series and the Wyatt family basically just gets destroyed by Undertaker and Kane. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, why is this hot gimmick, this great little trio they've got going with Bray and Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, why are they just being fed on a silver platter to Undertaker and Kane, who barely wrestle anymore? It didn't make sense to me then. It doesn't make sense to me now. The Wyatt family should have achieved much greater success than they did. If they had just run with them and just let them beat people on a consistent basis, the Wyatts could have been truly something special. Instead, they kind of became WWE's equivalent to Raven's flock, which was like, I think Raven once said that we were the most overstable of all time that never got a big win. And I think the Wyatts might have them beat in that regard. But I remember being thoroughly irritated with this match when it happened. And, if you want to see why Bray Wyatt left the WWE, he's currently on a new run now. We'll see how that goes. But this is one of the matches that kind of contributed to Bray's downfall in WWE, unfortunately. And we are back to Undertaker only wrestling one match in a year, 2016, where his only real match was at WrestleMania 32, where he battled Shane McMahon inside the Hell in a Cell, a match that was absolutely terrible, except for the crazy finish where Shane McMahon decided to be a lunatic and jump off the friggin' cell, which basically saved the match and was the major highlight of WrestleMania that year. So kudos to Shane for being a complete and utter lunatic. Undertaker's performance was less than stellar. He did not look to be in the best of shape for this particular outing. But one gigantic spot kind of saved the whole thing, and Undertaker got the win over Shane McMahon. And the match was not very good, but had a major highlight. So I guess you could say this is another instance like the WrestleMania 30 match, where a bad match is both, in a way, both the best and the worst, because it's a bad match, but it's also got a really amazing, a super amazing highlight that'll be on WrestleMania highlight reels forever. So how bad is it really if it's able to achieve that? So I don't know. That's another debate for another time. But 2016, another year where Undertaker only had one match, so I don't have a whole lot to work with here. Now, 2017 is just sad. Really, really sad. My pick for Undertaker's best match this year is going to go to the Royal Rumble match itself, where Undertaker was a special entrant alongside Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. And Undertaker looked absolutely awful in this match. He looked fat, slow, remarkably out of shape. Looked like he had no business being in the ring that night. And then you look at Goldberg, who looked like he was in the best shape of his career, and I'm like, dude, Goldberg looks way cooler than Undertaker right now, and that's sad. That's really sad. But it's the Royal Rumble, and this was kind of in the era where the Rumble matches had kind of been fiascos. Fortunately, that was not the case this year. The Rumble match was actually pretty good. Not one of the best, but still good. And it's sad that a poor performance from Undertaker is still his best match of the year, but that's the hand we've been dealt, because his worst match of the year came a few months later at WrestleMania 33, where he main evented in a no-holds-barred match against Roman Reigns, the new big main event babyface star that they were trying to create. And they went out there and had one of the worst matches I have ever seen close out a WrestleMania. And it was the subject of the Undertaker Last Ride docuseries, where they talked about it, and just how much of a fiasco that match was, where Undertaker looked so wildly out of shape, like he had no business being in that ring. And the fact that the match went half an hour only made it even worse, because it just seemed like the botches became more obvious, and Undertaker was out of position for a lot of spots. The entire thing was just a fiasco. And it was originally designed to be Undertaker's retirement match. And had that truly been his final match, good God. I mean, just good God, what a horrible, horrible match to end on that would have been. But yeah, this one did not go very well, unfortunately, and it was, of all, and Taker's had plenty of bad matches prior to this, but this one was like hit different because it felt like, oh wow, he's really done. Like this is it. Like we're never gonna see him wrestle again because he can't come back from this. But we still got more years to cover, so he would come back in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So let's check those years out and see if he improved. Undertaker did come back in 2018 and had a triumphant return at WrestleMania 34 where he faced John Cena in a match that barely broke over 2 minutes. It was fun to watch John Cena get squashed. I'm not gonna lie. I got a huge kick out of this entire thing. I'm still smiling thinking about that. It was, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's gonna win Match of the Year awards or it's gonna get 5 stars from Meltzer or anything like that, but did I have a stupid grin on my face the entire time while watching it? I sure did. And it got Undertaker back on track to being the dominant supernatural force that the character is supposed to be, and it felt like it washed away the bad taste of what had happened the year before. So, okay, Undertaker's back, and he's back to being consistently good whenever he shows up, and he never had a bad match ever again. Except Crown Jewel 2018 happened. Now, they had started a program between Triple H, Shawn Michaels, against Undertaker and Kane, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction, which was yet another attempt at being like the farewell of the Attitude Era, which I was like, you already did that at WrestleMania 28, and here we are 6 years later, and you're still doing it. But in any case, that was the program they had. They had a Undertaker Triple H match prior to the Crown Jewel match. So this is the main event of one of the Saudi Arabia pay-per-views. And this was Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement specifically for this match. So he got a huge payday for this one. And what I'll say about this match. This match is to WWE what Hogan Warrior at Halloween Havoc 98 was to WCW. It's the exact same thing. Where it's, legends, both sides of the ring. You've got nothing but legends, main event stars, going out there and trying to relive their glory days or trying to recapture the magic of something that they had previously and was just impossible to recapture. And this match turned into, very much like Hogan and Warrior, turned into a comedy of errors where it felt like they couldn't have screwed that match up more if they tried to do it on purpose. Between Kane's mask falling off, Triple H getting injured, and blown spot after blown spot after blown spot. And again, going back to the Undertaker Last Ride documentary, I think it was that doc where they showed Shawn Michaels backstage after it was over, and he did the Get Smart. Missed it by that much. And they knew. The performers all knew. Everybody that watched it knew. The match was a complete and utter train wreck of a match. And it was one of those situations where it was like, can we please stop doing these nostalgia matches? And if we're going to do nostalgia matches, can you please stop giving them half an hour and just watch, just creating opportunities for them to embarrass themselves. This match was embarrassing for everybody involved. It was bad for anybody who was hoping that they could pull through and have a really great match. And it's one of the worst matches in WWE history. And again, it's another example of maybe Undertaker should hang it up now because things aren't looking too good for him. Now we're getting into the home stretch, 2019, and if I had to pick Undertaker's best match of the year, it would be at Extreme Rules 2019, where he would tag with Roman Reigns, his former WrestleMania opponent, to take on Drew McIntyre and Shane McMahon in an Extreme Rules tag team match. And this is the best way to use Undertaker at this point, where he only had to hit his trademark stuff and kind of let everyone else involved carry the load, especially Drew and Roman. And that led to a more exciting and more fun match. Maybe it's not the epic 5-star match that Undertaker wanted to end his career on, but it was a very entertaining, very good, very solid match all around, and a fun one to watch. It's like, okay, maybe now it can be over. Maybe Undertaker can retire now. We can all go home and move on and appreciate him for the legend that he is. Except he got dragged into another Saudi Arabia show. This time, Super Showdown 2019, where he would main event the pay-per-view against Bill Goldberg. Another complete and utter train wreck of a match. Now, I watched the match twice because I was, and I did not watch the rest of the show. I had fully intended to skip this show because the Saudi shows don't really do it for me. But the internet was all ablaze about how terrible this match was. And I was like, well, shit, now I gotta watch it. So I skipped all the way to the end, watched it. And then I watched it back just to kind of like absorb what I had seen. And I obviously what happened, I think if you look at what they were trying to do in the match they had lined out or mapped out was actually pretty solid. It was a solid basic power match between two guys that can do that type of match. And I think the match that they had mapped out was probably pretty solid, or at least not terrible. Unfortunately, Goldberg concussed himself on the turnbuckle through an errant spear early into the match, and from there the whole thing just descended into chaos, where they blew every spot imaginable, almost killed each other a couple of times on some blown spots where it looked dangerous for both guys to be interacting with each other. And things got so bad that Goldberg, for whatever reason, he couldn't take the tombstone, or he couldn't... something went wrong with the finish, and he just kind of had to take a botched chokeslam for the finish. And, you know, it's not often that Undertaker breaks character, but the look that he gave after that match was over, you know, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that was definitely true in this case, because you could tell, like, Undertaker was not happy with how this one went down. And again, on paper, you're thinking, it's like, you look, and no one's going to accuse Bill Goldberg of being a catch-as-catch-can master, but the guy generates intrigue and excitement, and this is one of those dream matches that we didn't get back in 2001 when we got the WCW Invasion. So you're thinking Goldberg and Undertaker, they should be able to do something cool together, right? I mean, that should work, right? And unfortunately, it did not. And, you know, this is kind of a double tragedy because, again, it's Undertaker trying to chase that dream of ending his career on a major high note and still not succeeding. But there's also Bill Goldberg, who I thought had the perfect final match for him at WrestleMania 33, like the opposite of Undertaker at that same event. Goldberg had a match that stole the show and put over Lesnar, and I'm like, okay, Bill's done. Like, you can call it a day, ride off into the sunset, and be proud of yourself for a great final match. And then Bill just kept coming back, and it's like, dude, you should have walked after 33. You had it. You had your ending right there, and you didn't take it. And so it was like watching them both fail so spectacularly at this event. It was like it was a double tragedy for both of them, and two guys that I respect. I was a big Goldberg fan. I mean, in 1998, teenage me, I had Undertaker and I had Goldberg on both shows, and that was so cool to me. I was a big, huge fan of both of them, and to see them fail like this, the way that they did, was not great, and it was very unfortunate that it turned out the way that it did. But Undertaker would have other chances for redemption in the final year that he would spend in WWE, 2020. So let's move on to that. To say that 2020 was a weird year is an understatement. This was the year of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the response to it was to lock everything down. I'm not here to start a debate over whether or not that was the right thing to do. I'm just saying that that's what happened, and a lot of wrestling companies lost a lot of momentum because of those measures that were taken. And WWE was stuck because this all was going down just as they're preparing for WrestleMania. And what do? They ultimately decided to hold WrestleMania inside of the Performance Center. But before I get into that show, I should talk about Undertaker's first match of 2020, which happened right before the world shut down. And that was at Super Showdown 2020, where he faced AJ Styles, Andrade, Bobby Lashley, R-Truth, and Eric Rowan in the Tuwaiq Trophy Gauntlet match, a match that Undertaker would win. And it is my pick for Undertaker's worst match of 2020 by virtue of the fact he only had 2 matches that year. And this match is the other match that's not the best one. So this match was just an excuse to set up AJ and Undertaker for WrestleMania, which was probably, the match that Undertaker was hoping for to be that 5-star classic to end on. And then COVID happened and the world shut down, and so they would not be able to have this match in front of a crowd. Ingenuity took over, and they decided to take a page out of the Lucha Underground playbook and decided to go full-on cinematic. And that's how we got the Boneyard match. AJ Styles and The Undertaker, donning a getup closer resembling the American Badass version of the character. He even rode out of a motorcycle at the end of it. So this version of Undertaker was kind of a marriage between the American Badass and the Dead Man, but not in like that lame way it was in 2004, and actually kind of a cool way that it felt like Undertaker was referencing his entire history for his final match. The match itself was more of an action sequence or a fight scene in a movie. But WrestleMania 36 is probably the strangest WrestleMania of all time. Because most of it was held inside of an empty gym. And I credit the WWE for doing the absolute best that they could given the circumstances. It's like, look, the fact that this show even happened is a miracle. But it's the strangest WrestleMania of all time. I mean, and the COVID lockdowns lasted for so long. I don't think I ever got used to having shows in an empty venue. I don't think it was something I never got used to. And, AEW took measures to try and circumvent it, and WWE tried things like the Thunderdome and all this other stuff to try and make it work. It was something that I just could not get accustomed to. It's like wrestling only works when you have a live crowd there to react to stuff. But all of that said, the Boneyard match was the best match from this WrestleMania because it didn't rely on a crowd. It relied on the production team and everything that they did to try and make this thing look cinematic and larger than life. And to that end, I felt like they succeeded. The match itself was kind of cool, kind of fun. It was great to see AJ Styles get a spotlight WrestleMania match against a legend like The Undertaker. I've been a fan of AJ's since the mid-2000s, so it was cool to see that. And this match was rightfully the most heavily praised from this WrestleMania because this show was so weird. I mean, you're not going to pick a favorite match being one of the ones that was held inside of the empty gym. You're going to pick the crazy cinematic ones, which would be like the Boneyard match, and the next night, the Firefly Funhouse match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt. So, by default, this match, which is to date the final match of Undertaker's career, was his best match of 2020. Time will tell when we'll see Undertaker step into the ring again. He said during his Hall of Fame speech, never say never, so we shall see. He's one of those guys where the door is always open for him to come back and do whatever he wants because he's the goddamn Undertaker. But for right now, as a final match, I'm sure it's not the way he wanted to go out. He wanted to go out in front of a crowd, which anybody would, but considering how other attempts to try and have that last great match before retiring kind of failed, this is probably the best way to do it because you didn't have to worry about kind of slipping and falling in front of a crowd, and any mistakes could be left on the cutting room floor. So the Boneyard match worked in that regard. It worked as kind of a send-off for Undertaker at a time when it was very strange and things were weird, and they did the best that they absolutely could given the circumstances. But that will conclude this series. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Hopefully you all got a kick out of this trip down memory lane and looking at Undertaker's entire career, both the highs and the lows. I'm sorry that part 3 wasn't that great. Again, I should have thought this through a little bit better and not done it chronologically, but mistakes were made, and Can't change it now. But if you enjoyed this series, be sure to check out other videos that I've done throughout the years. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos, and stay tuned for more from me, because I will have more to do, especially as we move into 2023. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.